we learn the story of Mafia, the city of lost heaven, based on the retrospective of the main character, Thomas Angelo, a former member of the Salieri crime family. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Salieri family was a very influential criminal group operating in Lost Heaven, a metropolis that is a virtual equivalent of the city of Chicago. But not only. The city has many elements typical of both New York and San Francisco. Returning to Thomas Angelo after many unfortunate events to protect his beloved and daughter, he decided to cooperate with the police, seeing in this option the only chance for a better life and the possibility of escaping from the criminal underworld through a theoretically safe way. That's why he decided to contact Detective Norman and make him an offer, which is safety for Angelo and his loved ones in exchange for information that will help Norman arrest the powerful Ennio Salieri, the Don of Salieri crime family. Detective Norman, seeing this as a huge chance to catch the kingpin, decided to give Thomas Angelo a chance. Thomas's story begins in the fall of 1930. Thomas is a taxi driver who can barely make ends meet. Every day for Thomas looks almost identical, from one fare to another, taking breaks and smoking cigarettes. However, one of these breaks becomes crucial for the protagonist to such an extent that it turns his life upside down. One day during his break, Thomas hears a big bang. Shortly afterward, two gangsters jump out at him from around the corner and give the main character a clear message. Either you save us from this bad situation, or you will get shot in the head. Tommy, having no choice, takes Sam and Polly into his taxi and tries to get them out. After a long, action-packed chase, Thomas drives Sam and Polly to the indicated location. Thomas is not only generously compensated by the Salieri Mafia for his losses in the form of a badly damaged taxi, but also receives an offer to join the group if he wants to work for Mr. Salieri. Thomas has to think about it, but in the end has no intention of having anything to do with the mobsters, following the saying that it's better to be poor and alive than rich and dead. However, fate does not allow Thomas to forget all this. After some time, during his daily work, the man is attacked by the Morello family's thugs. While escaping from the attackers, he remembered that there was a Salieri family bar nearby. It seems to be the perfect place to hide. After all, Don agreed to help Thomas if he needed to. Fortunately, Thomas Angelo reaches the bar in time and the mobsters help Thomas. At this point, Angelo realizes that he is in big trouble, so he decides to take Salieri's offer and joins the gang. He didn't have much choice really, because at any time, someone from the Morello crime family could attack him again. Don Salieri introduces Thomas to this brutal world and explains the rules. Moreover, Thomas also meets up with an important character, Frank Coletti, who serves as Salieri's right-hand man, the so-called consigliere. Later on, Thomas meets other interesting characters such as weapons expert Vincenzo, bartender Luigi, and car specialist Ralph. As for the initiation, Tommy is asked to destroy the rival gang's cars. Thomas performs great, and soon after, he is accepted into the family. The next task Don prepares for Thomas is supposed to be child's play. Thomas is to be a bit of a chauffeur during Sam and Polly's routine racketeering operation. In the beginning, everything goes smoothly, but after reaching Clark's Motel located on the outskirts of the city, there is a shootout with soldiers of a rival crime family. It can be said that Thomas is once again getting extremely lucky when it comes to proving himself. The man breaks into the hotel where he kills all the enemies, saving Polly, who has been shot, and Sam, who was taken hostage. Thomas even manages to recover the money. After this action, Thomas introduces Detective Norman to the profiles of Don Morello and Don Salieri. The main character explains how the heads of the two largest organizations in Lost Heaven operated, putting Don Salieri in a better light. The conversation shows that Morello was an unprincipled, ruthless psychopath whom people were extremely afraid of. Salieri, on the other hand, was a person who made connections and had powerful friends. Salieri tried to build trust in the community, thus giving a message, "It's better to be with me than against me. I will gladly reward those who will offer their friendship to me. I will look after them, and I will be happy to help them in any case. But those who oppose me will be severely punished." Returning to the events at hand, during the next task for the mobsters, we learn that Don Salieri intends to earn some money from car racing. However, the driver who was supposed to be Don Salieri's and his friend's pick probably won't win. Why? Well, it turns out that the mechanic Ralphie forgot to mention to Salieri that a certain well-skilled driver from Europe would take part in the race. Therefore, Angelo's next task is to steal a car belonging to the European driver mentioned a second ago, and then deliver this car straight to Lucas Bertone. Lucas is a mechanic with knowledge of racing cars who will simply try to worsen the performance of the European guy's car so that the driver's skills will be of no use. Even though everything is going according to plan, there is another problem. Well, someone broke Salieri's driver's hand, so Thomas will have to replace him on the track. Even though Thomas has never taken part in a race, he still somehow deals with his opponents. He wins the race, and Don Salieri saves his face in the eyes of the people he told to bet money on his competitor. Sometime later, Thomas meets the love of his life, Sarah, who is the daughter of the bartender, Luigi. The couple's story began very innocently. One evening, the bartender Luigi asked Tommy to take his daughter home because some bastards had been bothering her the previous day. It was a good decision on Luigi's part because the same thing happened again. Thomas once again took an opportunity and saved Sarah, giving the thugs a solid lesson. The next day, Don Salieri was informed about the whole incident, and he did not like it very much. Don ordered his men to sort it out. But what is important to underline, the gentleman mustn't kill anyone, but only teach them a lesson. In the end, Paulie and Thomas are sent to Biff, who is to tell them more about where the hooligans spreading around the Salieri's area may be hiding. The whole operation went relatively according to plan, except for the fact that there was a dead body. The next day, Thomas talks to Frank. The conversation shows that everything is starting to get complicated because one of the witnesses of the entire incident survived. Luckily, it quickly turns out that the chapter can be closed because the witness does not know Thomas, which makes it seem that the whole confusion will just blow over. Furthermore, it turns out that Frank didn't meet with Thomas for that purpose. The goal of the meeting was actually to give him another task, which was to deal with a certain brothel owner who, despite a lot of help from Mr. Salieri, still decided to collaborate with Morello. Frank sends Thomas to the destination to take out the owner and plant explosives in his office, which is to send a message to other businessmen who also have plans to be friends with Morello. An additional task turns out to be the elimination of a prostitute who started selling information about the Salieri to Morello's people. It is here that Thomas makes a big mistake, which only initially has no consequences. Namely, Thomas saves the woman who played against the Salieris. An unlucky twist of fate, when Thomas escapes after blowing up explosives in a brothel, turns out that his escape route leads him through the church, where the funeral of Billy, a hooligan whom Thomas and Paulie killed in the previous task. It all ends in one big shootout because Thomas is recognized by the gangsters participating in the ceremony. From that moment on, things looked very bad for the Salieri crime family. The father of the deceased Billy, who was a city councilman, said a lot of bad things regarding the Salieris. What's more, Billy's father supported the Morello family. All of Salieri's opponents benefited greatly from this. Billy's father was turning law enforcement against the Salieri. The police continued to earn a lot of money from Morello and could also boast that they were fighting criminals by referring to the Salieris. With the help of the police, Morello was able to hunt down Don Salieri without worrying about his interests, from which the police stayed away. The Salieris were deep in trouble. Seeing how bad the whole situation escalated, Thomas and Paulie started to live a far better life while being at huge risk. They started enjoying life more than usual, drinking heavily. Frank gave Tommy a helping hand and taught him many valuable lessons. Sometime later, Frank informs Thomas that 2 trucks full of good quality booze are coming straight from Canada. Sam's task is to take over the precious cargo, while Paulie and Tommy's task is to transport this cargo to the city. When Thomas and Paulie arrive, it turns out that the area has been secured by Morello's men. All hell breaks loose on the farm. There is a huge gunfight. The gentlemen eventually break through numerous enemy troops. They even manage to find Sam, who is seriously injured, but fortunately not fatally. However, it is difficult to find any other positives in this whole action. After all, the alcohol that was the purpose of this task was gone for good. The worst thing in all this is that Frank, Don Salieri's right-hand man, decided to help law enforcement. Frank has broken omerta, which is the life promise of being silent about anything going on in the family, and he's going to provide accounting books that heavily incriminate Don Salieri. To counteract this, Thomas Angelo has to kill Frank as quickly as possible. However, it turns out that Frank made a deal with law enforcement in the following way. Frank and his family are going to be sent to Europe as a thank you for exposing the Salieris, where a new chapter of life awaits him, far from his criminal past. A little later, when Thomas manages to catch Frank, it turns out that he has no other option and has to betray the Salieri to save his own family. The police, who were playing with Morello, threatened that if Ennio Salieri's right-hand man, Frank, did not expose the mobsters, he would have to accept that he had killed his child and wife with such a move. Frank, as you can see, really had no choice. He was constantly blackmailed and intimidated, and the fate of his loved ones was at stake. Although Thomas originally wants to kill Frank, he eventually decides to spare his life. The men manage to arrange it all in such a way that Thomas can recover the account books before the police do, but also in such a way that Frank can leave town with his family. As Thomas said, everyone believed that Frank was dead and that Angelo had disposed of his body. There was even a fake funeral for Frank, which further confirmed to everyone that the death of the former consigliere took place. Shortly after Frank's funeral, another problem appears on the horizon. Well, the prosecutor dug up further evidence that was against the Salieri family. And on top of that, he even found witnesses who could confirm some of Salieri's evil deeds. While Sam and Polly are taking out these witnesses, Thomas is tasked with stealing the evidence collected by the prosecutor, which he keeps in his mansion. The main character is helped in his task by Salvatore, who is a master in opening safes and manages to open the safe in the prosecutor's villa. During the Salieri meeting, Don praises his students for their well-performed tasks. Moreover, Polly presents suggestions for obtaining alcohol from a man from Kentucky. The booze from Kentucky will help the Salieris successfully redeem themselves financially, especially since the drink sold by Morello is not very delicious. After reaching the place, while discussing details with Polly's contact, a fight breaks out with Morello's people, from which the boys eventually manage to escape unscathed. The funniest thing is that, later on, a very funny piece of information about Polly's guy comes to light. Well, this whole contact, that is Mr. Gates, stole the alcohol obtained by the Morellos and wanted to sell it to Salieris. Gates was not from Kentucky and never drank alcohol himself. Therefore, not only did the Salieri manage to obtain great goods, but also managed to harm Morello's interests. We didn't have to wait long for the retaliation, though. One sunny day, Don Salieri asks Thomas to go with him to Pepe's restaurant for dinner because his bodyguard is ill and there is no one to take him or protect him if necessary. While eating together, there is an attempted attack on Don Salieri, from which both characters manage to survive. It was probably Carlo, the bodyguard of Don Salieri, who let Morello's people know where and when there would be a good opportunity to attack Ennio. Therefore, he did not come to work that day and was replaced by Thomas Angelo. At this point, the war between the Salieris and the Morellos reaches an even higher level. The Morellos unfortunately have a big advantage. That's the reason why Don Salieri wants to try to equalize the forces at the beginning. To do this, Don wants Thomas to get rid of Morello's important allies. The first target is a counselor who dies at the hands of Thomas during a birthday party on the ship. The next target turns out to be the brother and right hand of the Salieris, Sergio Morello Jr., who controls trade unions in the entire city. This is a very important link because the man controls almost all imports of goods into the city. His assassination will mean that the Morellos will lose a large part of their earnings, and therefore it was agreed that Sergio had to be killed. However, Sergio was very lucky all the time. Despite many attempts on his life, he still emerged unscathed. Don Salieri's soldiers kill the wrong guy, and the wrong person gets into the trap car. Nevertheless, they finally manage to catch him. When Sergio is already dead, there is nothing left but to deal the last blow to Morello, and kill him, in other words. This task does not go well from the very beginning, but after quite a lot of perturbations, Polly, Sam, and Thomas deal with Morello, who dies in a spectacular plane crash. This is the moment that officially seals Don Salieri's victory. Ennio Salieri becomes the main figure on the criminal map of Lost Heaven. However, as it happens, there will always be some problems. In this case, Thomas didn't have to wait too long either. Don Salieri is furious with a certain corrupt politician who has built a narrative around himself as the savior of the nation, while in reality, he owns half of the brothels in the entire city. What Ennio Salieri dislikes the most is the fact that he cannot get protection money from him, even though he operates on the territory belonging to the Salieri. Tommy is skeptical about taking out the politician, but his boss convinces him, among other things, that this action will give the family even more power. Although the mission is difficult, he succeeds. The next task is quite routine and involves stealing cigars from the port. What is interesting is the conversation between Paulie, Thomas, and Sam, in which Paulie suggests his friends commit a bank robbery without informing Don Salieri. Both men refuse to Paulie, but in a few hours, a key event takes place. When Paulie and Thomas return the stolen goods to Don, it turns out that Salieri is lying to his soldiers. The gentlemen thought they were stealing cigars, and eventually, because Paulie accidentally broke one of the boxes, it turned out that the boxes contained not cigars, but diamonds. Thomas, feeling cheated, tells Paulie that he takes back what he said, and that it would be good to discuss the potential plan to rob the bank again. This is exactly what happens in the end. Paulie and Tommy feel tricked, which encourages them to take part in a robbery that goes brilliantly. The loot is stolen and the men become extremely rich. Initially, the gentlemen decide to hide the goods at Paulie's and then discuss what to do with the money, how to invest it, and so on. However, when Thomas goes to Paulie's apartment the next day, he is left with an unpleasant surprise. Paulie is dead and the cash has been taken. Additionally, there is a mysterious telephone ringing in the background. Thomas answers and hears Sam telling Tommy that he's in deep shit because Salieri found out about the bank robbery. Sam says he will help Tommy, but he has to act quickly, so he tells him to drive to the city gallery as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, when Thomas arrives, it quickly turns out to be a trap. Despite finding himself in a dead end, the main character escapes with his life, killing Sam, who just before his death gave a clear warning to everyone who wanted to enter this world. Thomas couldn't believe this warning until the end. Moreover, it would seem that in Thomas's case, his actions would have no consequences, but nothing could be more wrong. Even though Thomas's testimony allowed Ennio Salieri to be locked behind bars for the rest of his life, and Thomas was placed in witness protection, it did not end with a happy ending. Yes, Thomas was moved to the other side of the United States to start a new life with his family. Nevertheless, there was not a day during which he did not mention the events of those years at least once. There wasn't a day during which he forgot even once that he had to look back all the time. And despite all this, every dog has its day. Thomas Angelo had to eventually pay the price as well because there was no way out. Thanks for watching this episode. Please let me know if you like this video. I will be very pleased if you leave a thumbs up or down and a comment. This was Hubson. Take care and see you soon.